All right, so here are the 5 questions you should ask your community before beginning any campaign. All right, for some context, most schools and districts we work with want to jump straight to the visual stuff, the new logo, the new website, the new brochure. And that's really the fun part, right? But if you skip those foundational conversations, you end up with a brand that maybe looks great, but really doesn't say anything. So we call those initial conversations brand insight meetings. And we facilitate them usually with students, staff, teachers, board members, parents, really anyone who shapes or experiences the brand on a daily basis. And the goal isn't to collect opinions necessarily. It's really to find the gaps between what the school believes about itself and what the community actually experiences. So, what I'm about to share isn't proprietary secret sauce. I'm giving this away because, asking the questions really isn't the hard part. Knowing what to do with those answers is really where the strategy lives. So, here are the 5 areas we dig into, and I'll tell you what each one is really designed to uncover. All right, so here are the 5 questions you should ask your community before beginning any campaign. So, roughly 99% of the engagements we do at Rhodes begin with conversations with our clients' community. Those engagements don't begin with a presentation, mood boards, logo concepts. They begin with a conversation, actually, many conversations. We call those conversations brand insight meetings. And the questions we ask in those meetings are very intentional and they determine really everything that follows after the brand insight meetings. So today I'm going to walk you through the exact questions we use, why we ask them, and what the answers reveal about a school's brand. So the first question we ask is, if we don't strengthen the brand or create a cohesive brand strategy, what problem remains unsolved? So this is the first question we ask because it's probably the most important one. If the leadership team can't articulate the problem this work is actually solving, then this is really just a cosmetic and vanity driven exercise at the end of the day. Sometimes the answer is enrollment, and maybe you're losing families to the school down the road. Sometimes it's internal, and your own staff can't really explain, what makes you unique or different in a recruiting process. Sometimes it's perception, and maybe your community thinks, you're something you're not. Each of those is a completely different strategic challenge, even though they all usually get labeled as we need better marketing. Raise your hand if you've heard that before. So, the follow up to that initial question that really matters is, how would you define success for this work 1 year from today? And if the answer is, we need a new logo, we usually know we need to reframe the conversation in some way. But if they say, families choosing us because they understand what we offer, now we're in the right territory. So this question around purpose isn't about a mission statement. It's really about why we are in the room together right now. What's broken, what's at stake, and what does fixed actually look like? So the second question we ask is around foundation. And that question is, how would you describe your school to someone new to the area in 1 minute? So we ask this to every single person in the room individually, and we almost always get a different answer from each person. That's not necessarily a failure, it's really a diagnosis. If your head of school describes your organization one way and your communications director describes it differently, and then your board chair comes over the top and has a third version, then your community is definitely getting mixed signals. So the 1 minute constraint is very intentional. Schools love to lead with history, philosophy, accreditation, things that probably matter a lot internally, but don't necessarily help a prospective family or prospective employee decide in the first 60 seconds whether they want a deeper conversation with you. So we're also listening for what people leave out. If nobody mentions the thing that actually makes you unique, and that really tells us the brand hasn't been articulated clearly enough for insiders to even use it. The enrollment journey questions are really critical in this process too. Where do families hesitate or drop off? That question alone has reshaped entire messaging strategies for our clients. Because the brand doesn't just live on your website, it lives in every single touch point from that first Google search to a student actually enrolling or an employee signing a contract. Foundation is where we find the gap between what you are and what you say you are. And that gap is usually your biggest brand problem, and most schools don't even know it exists. The third question area is around perception and audience. And that question is, what are the most common misconceptions you encounter? What does each audience currently believe about you? And what belief do you really want to shift? And this is where things get interesting because, we're asking school leaders to be honest about the stuff that is often uncomfortable. Every school, every organization has misconceptions. Maybe the community thinks you're only for a certain type of student. Maybe they think you're too expensive. Maybe they think you're not academically rigorous. And that misconception question is actually a gift because once you identify it, once you name it, you can actually build messaging that directly addresses it. But if you don't name it, you just keep talking louder about the same things you already say, and those misconceptions just continue to persist. So the audience belief shift question is really where strategy gets specific. You're not writing one message for everyone. Parents need to hear something different than students. Community leaders need something different than industry partners. A strong brand has a consistent core message with audience specific proof points that are built around it. As part of this, we also ask which audiences have the greatest influence on awareness and credibility. For some, that might be current parents because word of mouth is your most powerful channel. For a CTE program, for instance, it might be employer partners because their endorsement validates everything else. So your brand isn't what you say about yourself. It's really what people say about you when you're not in the room. And these questions help us figure out what they're saying and what you need them to say instead. So the fourth question area is around positioning. And the question we ask here is really more of a Mad Libs game rather than a question, which is finish this sentence. I choose your school because blank. This is actually my favorite part of the brain insight meetings because it really forces clarity. You can't hide behind jargon or aspirational language. You have to finish the sentence. And here's what happens almost every single time. The first answers are often very generic. We often hear because we care about every student or because we offer a well-rounded education. If that's putting you to sleep, it's put me to sleep too in many of these meetings. And those answers are really table stakes. Every school says that it's not a real differentiator. It's not really unique. So we often push with this question. What would a family lose if you didn't exist? What can they get here that they literally cannot get anywhere else? And that's really where the real positioning lives. Um, the strongest proof points are usually specific to a unique program model, a measurable outcome, a relationship structure that no other school in the area offers. It's not we're a family, but what that family-like environment actually produces for students. So if you can't finish that sentence in a way that's specific to your school and only your school, your brand has a positioning problem, and honestly, no amount of great design work will fix that. So the fifth and final question area is around measurement. It's probably the most important one. And the question we ask here is what specific outcomes can we set as a measurable goal for this progress? And this one often surprises people because they don't always expect a branding agency to talk about ROIs or KPIs, but it's really all we talk about. But if we can't measure whether the brand work actually moves the needle, then what are we really doing here? So we push our clients to get specific with this work. Whether we're talking about inquiry numbers, enrollment conversion rates, social engagement, community perception surveys before and after, applications for open positions. We're not talking about vanity metrics, but we're talking about metrics that connect to the problems we've identified in question one. And this also protects our clients because if you're investing in brand strategy, you deserve to know whether or not this worked. And honestly, it protects us because we want to prove the value of what we do with data and not just pretty deliverables. So brand work without measurement is really just decoration. We want to build brands that you can actually prove are working. All right, so those are the five questions, and they center around purpose, foundation, perception, positioning, and measurement. And that's how we start every engagement at Rhodes Branding. Again, we don't start with fonts, colors, brochures, flyers. We start with conversations that uncover what a school actually needs and who needs to hear it. So if you're an education leader watching this and you can't clearly answer, that choose us question, or if your team, would give 5 different answers to describe your school in 1 minute, again, that's not a marketing problem. That's a brand strategy problem. And the good news is it's solvable. So if you want to talk about it more, send me a note and we can chat more. But thank you for watching and have a great rest of your school year.